Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Manno, is in session.
And welcome once again to Faith on Trial. We examine the influence of law and society on people of faith. I'm Deacon Mike Manno, your host, and I'm here with Gina, Noll, our co-host. And it's a nice Thursday morning here as we're getting ready to tape. And I'm wondering, Gina, if you saw the interview with Kamala Harris on Fox News last night.
Actually, yeah, it's Thursday morning, so that was last night, Wednesday. Mm-hmm. I've seen clips of it. I can't watch it anymore. It's not word salad, but it was filibuster. That's a perfect way to explain what she was doing. It's a whole bunch of really good, big words. Mm-hmm. Let me be clear. She starts every response that I've seen with "Let me be clear," and it doesn't sound very clear to me. No, so I feel bad for her. Although I've been in some courts where attorneys talk exactly the way she's talking, just to kind of confuse the jury, maybe, or the witness, but not saying anything but sounding really important.
Yeah, with the hallmark in a courtroom is to be very simple and direct, so that people understand what it is that you're saying. You don't have to use big words to make them understand. And I remember in journalism school we were taught, you write for the seventh grade cab driver. You're the guy with a seventh grade education to drive in a cab. That's who you write for. You don't write for the PhD candidate. And politicians should do the same thing. But to me, it just showed how thin she was. There wasn't much substance to her.
Well, and the campaign has always been, even when Joe Biden was the candidate, was not Trump. Mm-hmm. While Trump has his faults for sure, you got to look at as a voter, as a citizen of this country, you've got to look at the policies that are beneficial to our country.
And to our church, too, because a lot of this stuff revolves around religious liberty.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot more stories about how Miss Harris was as a prosecutor in California, mm-hmm. who did not have much animus for the people of Catholic faith.
Well,
and as a senator when she came and attacked the Knights of Columbus.
The Al Spitz dinner is tonight.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They're speaking, but she's not going to come.
Right.
She's decided to boycott it. It's a fundraiser for Catholic charities. And, I remember back, now this is dating me a little bit, but first presidential election that I really followed as a kid was Kennedy-Nixon. And remember, they had an Al Smith dinner then, and Kennedy and Nixon both showed up, and they've all been there except for Mondale. They've all been there every other time that we've had one of those dinners.
Obviously, I followed elections for a long time, but the Al Smith dinner is something new to me within, in the 21st century. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I didn't know about it before then.
Yeah, I went back to ancient times when I was a kid.
I remember, I love seeing the clips afterwards. It's so lighthearted, and it adds a different dimension to what we do in campaigns and elections in this country. So
yeah, now we get out the daggers, and you can see why.
And who has a better laugh than Cardinal Dolan? I love watching him laugh.
Yeah, he's good. He
makes me smile.
He's very good at it. All right, we got an interesting show again today. We're going to start off with Logan Church from Catholic Vote. There is a story floating around, and she's going to talk a little bit about it, about all of these Catholic hospitals that are performing these gender-affirming surgeries, I guess you'd call it.
And hormones and all kinds of
care. Well, more than just
the
hormones.
Right.
Surgeries.
Sure.
And so we're going to talk to her about that and why that's happening and what's going on about it. And what can the church do about it?
Well, interesting. Catholic Vote didn't do this study. They picked
No.
up on the study from an organization called Do No Harm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm anxious for Logan to explain to our listeners about Do No Harm because
Seems to me we've had Do No Harm on our program before.
Yeah, they're not known to be a conservative organization,
Right.
so it'll be interesting.
All right. And then we're going to have Steve Havemann, who is the executive director of the St. Vincent de Paul Society here in town. And you're going to talk about some of the programs that they have going. Especially, as we're getting close to the holidays here, we want to know what's available to people because we have to start thinking about charitable things right now. We should be thinking about it all year long, but this is the time for that to come up.
Well, I was going to say that with the weather becoming more uncomfortably cold, St. Vincent de Paul does quite a bit to help people in need of shelter and clothing and those kinds of things, including food and items. So that'll be interesting to
I was telling
talk
Steve
about.
on the phone the other day, I didn't think too much about, I knew it was there. We've had Steve on a couple of times before, but recently my wife got involved in the St. Vincent program over at St. Augustine's, and she's now treasurer of the organization, and so she's spending a lot of time doing that. So I hear all about what's going on, and
they're quiet organization because don't all parishes have a St. Vincent?
Not all of them do.
Group?
But as I understand it.
Well, St. Augustine has a long history of having that group, and they're not very visible. Unless you know about them, you don't know about them.
What's going on, right. And so
but they do good work.
She's been out and doing home visits for people that need money to help pay rent and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting story that she tells. But she won't come on to tell it.
No, well,
I thought that'd make a good conversation. Oh no,
man on the street.
Yeah, man on the street. All right, do you have a prayer to open us up with?
Oh gosh, I do. I have a prayer for peace today. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts are consumed with hatred. Strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among the nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, and we will be right back with Logan Church after these messages. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. We have with us right now Logan Church from CatholicVote.com, and this is a very, I think, kind of a sad story that we're going to talk about today because it shows a lot of things that we didn't want to see in the church, but it has to do with Catholic hospitals and this gender-transforming surgery that is being done in a number of them. And I think a number of them are doing it to children. So, Logan, I know this is not something that Catholic Vote wrote, but it's something that Catholic Vote has been involved in. So if you can give us the background of this a little bit and tell us what is going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I would say that a big part of Catholic Vote is not just what happens on Election Day, but also making sure that Catholic voters know what's going on. And I think this is one of those topics. Like you said, it's uncomfortable. People don't really want to think about it. But it's a reality that's happening. And so we've been working with a group called Do No Harm into trying to uncover this data and uncover what's happening at these hospitals. Not only Catholic, but all hospitals. You know, we want a real grasp of what's happening with these kids. And I personally was shocked when I saw the numbers. But then when we started to pull back the layers, we started to see that there were Catholic hospitals performing these transgender mutilation surgeries, with the biggest being Providence Health Care and Services, which they have 51 hospitals across the western part of the nation, and they performed 81 castration surgeries on children. Wow. And so, you know, we start pulling back these numbers, and you know, they prescribe puberty blockers to over 100 kids. And these, like I said, this is at a Catholic hospital. And so, you know, I think Catholics everywhere should be concerned about this, not just at Catholic hospitals, but, you know, the fact that this is actually happening to children in our communities and in our state.
All right, let's talk about what some of the procedures were that were used in these hospitals, and I guess they're also being used in other hospitals too. But Catholic hospitals, what were some of the procedures that they were doing?
Well, one of the biggest thing was, obviously the largest number was prescribing kids cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers, which is obviously the first step in those surgeries. So before you can go and do the castration, that's what we would call a chemical castration. And so that is where you give drugs that are going to prevent those children from developing in the way that God created them to develop. And usually the next step after that is to perform the actual surgery once the hormones have been blocked. And then one of the other surgeries that we saw is, like I said, the castration of the kids, where they are actually performing the sex change surgery itself and changing their body parts. Whether that's mastectomies or otherwise.
Yeah, well, I've been reading stories where young ladies, maybe 13, 14, 15, are getting mastectomies, and young boys are getting castrated. But it seems to be prevalent now in a lot of Catholic facilities, and I should mention here that all of this is in violation of Catholic medical norms.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll hear, some sort of logic where people try to say, well, because you're not actually touching their reproductive organs, a mastectomy is fair game. And that's absolutely insane to even think that, that's what people think. But
when you say people, who says that? What, are those doctors saying that kind of, using that kind of rationale?
Absolutely, yes. And so, they're saying that you're not permanently altering the child's sex organs, therefore it's totally fair game.
Let's back up for just a minute, Logan. If I could ask a question about Do No Harm, the organization, and your relationship with Catholic Vote. Do No Harm does reporting on this kind of stuff all the time. Does Catholic Vote work with them on a regular basis, or was it just this particular issue? And then if you could describe, why is Do No Harm collecting this information, and how are they collecting it?
Yeah, so first I would say this. We have a very good relationship with groups like Do No Harm. This is the first open collaboration we've had where, they had this data they were working through. We got access to it, and we were already working on a healthcare report about Catholic hospitals as it pertained to other issues that maybe aren't so Catholic going on within the doors of Catholic hospitals. And as soon as we heard wind that they were already collecting this data. And so you asked how they're collecting the data. It's through public record, so billing access. So what happens is all the billings for all these hospitals are reported. And once you figure out how to read the billing code, you're able to decipher it. And so that's something that Do No Harm has been working on for quite some time, working with code specialists to try to decode what were the codes for these surgeries at these particular hospitals and how many happened. So all this information is publicly accessible. It's just a matter of knowing how to read it.
Very good.
Wow. Just out of curiosity, what were some of the other issues that you were looking into?
Well, I think that this report's going to be released later this year, but trying to look in, are abortions happening in these hospitals? Are they handing out the abortion pill in situations that are not miscarriage D&C related? How are they operating under the teachings of the church while trying to say they're a Catholic hospital?
Okay, now, why is this happening in Catholic hospitals?
Yeah, that's the question we have too. At the end of the day, I think that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I think it's easy for people they forget the mission and they get wrapped up in the money. And I think we see that in a lot of areas, but especially in healthcare. And so I think that that's really what it gets down to is this is an incredibly lucrative lane. You put children on puberty blockers and they're repeat clients. This is expensive.
You have a patient for life, I've heard it described as. Yes. Yep.
And so this is, you think about it. You think about how lucrative plastic surgery is alone. Now make it something where you're mixing it with the hormones and they're required to come back for the rest of their life.
Exactly. Hey,
well, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I have on my list like probably a half a dozen of the top hospitals that are Catholic that are performing these procedures. Many of them are in metropolitan areas, which makes me wonder if the physicians that are providing these services are part of other hospital organizations, and so they're kind of oblivious, shall we say, to the fact that this particular hospital is Catholic. Is there some rationale to that? Could it be just that the doctors are used to doing it at other hospitals, so they go ahead and perform it at the Catholic hospital also?
While I think, yes, there could be some rationale there, at the end of the day, it's not really the doctors in these hospitals that decide what procedures are acceptable. You have hospital boards that say we're not going to do patient surgery, or we're not going to do this or that. And so, these doctors, I think, largely are operating under marching orders that are bigger than them. But I do agree, when you have a Catholic hospital, not every doctor that works there is going to be aligned with the teachings of the church. They're just there to save lives. And so I think there probably is some logic to that reasoning as well.
So, and looking at the report one more time, I'm horrified by the numbers that I see here for the Catholic hospitals, but how does that compare to the secular hospitals?
Obviously, the secular hospitals are much larger.
Oh.
And that's just, you have to think there are more secular hospitals than there are Catholic hospitals. And when we look at Catholic hospitals, we're looking at real Catholic hospitals, not ones that have been bought out by, major organizations and kept the name. And so, yeah, in different states, it's hard to dive in. It makes me sick to look at, but we're talking about thousands of kids receiving gender mutilation, whether it's pills, castration, or actual surgery.
So this final report will be horrific for all of us to view.
It is tough to read. It is tough to look at. It makes me sick. But I think this is the type of thing, it makes people sick, but you need to be sick over this. People need to know what's happening. Because, people want to believe when you hear it in these commercials during election season, especially this time of year, people are like, oh, it's just a talking point. That's not really happening. It is really happening. It's happening in our neighborhoods, in our state.
I just wrote a column for The Wanderer where I'm pointing out all the arguments that are being made in the advertising for the election now, that the most important issue facing us today is abortion, and that it trumps everything else, and that if you don't have the right to kill your offspring, you're somehow not a woman, and so the heck with the peace around the world, the heck with the economy, the heck with safety and national security. It's abortion is the key issue, and if you can't vote on that, then you're just out of it. So
right. Absolutely. And what I do hope is that in a lot of these Catholic hospitals, this is an easy correction, whether it's a rogue doctor or a board that needs to be corrected. I'm hoping that once we shine a light on this, my hope for it is that this is a correction amongst the Catholic hospitals that we're able to quickly clean up. But there is, like I said, a bigger problem here when we look at the hospital industry as a whole.
So I don't quite understand the hierarchy of the Catholic hospital. Is it under the direction of the diocese? Is there a bishop or a cardinal that needs to step in? How does that work?
Well, I would say I think it is different by different areas. But no, Catholic hospitals largely are ran in their own hierarchy. That being said, the bishop obviously has some sway, but we believe that bishops aren't to blame in this particular situation, and which is why, Tommy Valentine has worked closely with drawing attention to these issues to the bishops that it pertains to. So if there's things going on in this state, we're working to meet with those bishops and say, this is happening in your hospitals, in your diocese, and trying to work together to solve this, because I don't know of any bishops that are advocating for this type of monstrosity.
No, but I know of a lot of bishops that would turn their head to something if it means getting involved in some type of conflict. And we've seen that happen over the years, especially with the issue of abortion, where they've spoken nicely about it, but they don't seem to follow up in their actions. I have in my understanding of the situation with the Catholics is that the bishop can authorize the use of the word Catholic in the title of a hospital or any type of organization. And if he revokes the use of the name, then they can't call themselves Catholic. Have you talked to any bishops that are willing to go that far?
I think we're in the early phases of the conversations right now. Most of the bishops that we've talked to are shocked. They are totally unaware of what's happening under their roof. So, I think that informing them is step one, and then we'll figure out the next steps. But you're right, that is true. I mean, it's like that with schools, too. If you start up, a Catholic school, the bishop gets to determine whether or not you actually get to be a Catholic school in their diocese. And so if they want to be affiliated with the diocese or affiliated with the church, the bishop does get to reign over that. But like I said, I believe first step is find out, is this a rogue doctor? In some of these cases where there's one kid that it happened, you have to ask yourself, okay, maybe this is one doctor who went off the rail. But then other cases where you have 46 or, 50 kids, then you have to start asking, okay, do people really not know this is happening under their roof? Or is this a bigger issue that we need to unveil? And so I think those are all things that we're going to be looking into in this report that we're going to be releasing. And like I said, we have been working alongside the bishops and making sure they're staying informed every step of the way. And then we can determine next best steps. If bishops aren't acting on it, that's a different conversation. But we want to give them the opportunity to do what's right first.
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. You got to make them aware of what's going on. The only thing is, my concern is that over the years we've seen them articulate things that don't really sound like they're coming down very firmly on something. For example, the issue of abortion and voting. That's been kind of a gray area in what they've written before, and I'd like to see something stronger. And it seems to me the impression, now we happen to have a pretty good bishop here in Des Moines, but it seems to me that I've seen and heard of other bishops around the country, and people will call me and talk to me about them, that are kind of, they kind of know what's going on, and they don't necessarily want to be bothered by something, and they'll let somebody else handle that, and they'll kind of turn their head to the problem. And I'm hoping that's not what you're going to be finding with these bishops you're talking to about this issue, because it's a very serious issue, talking about mutilating children.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I would say, obviously we do a lot of work in the political realm, working with Catholics. And so we have some bishops that are very friendly to our cause and some bishops that are not fans of ours. And so I'm sure that's not shocking to you guys.
No, we found
there are some clergy that obviously think that politics and religion do not belong together. And
right.
you see that play out.
Yeah, and we believe the Bible's pretty clear. If you have a higher understanding, it's your obligation to share that.
That's right.
And so that's why Catholics are morally obligated to go vote, because we have a higher understanding of how things should be working and the way our nation should be moving, which is exactly why we have to vote. But I agree.
And it's stated very clearly in our rule book called the Catechism.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And we've got an obligation to protect the church and protect religious liberty, too. And that's what we're all about here.
Right.
Is protecting the church and protecting religious liberty.
The only way we can evangelize.
And we're not getting into politics. Politics
right.
is getting into us, is what's happening. Politics is raising its ugly head in the church, and we're combating that. And it's raising its ugly head to do harm to the church. We've seen church closings. We've seen pastors being run out of their congregations in handcuffs because they've had too many people in their church services. I've had some time ago we had a pastor that was being arrested because they were feeding people in their church, homeless people in their church. This is just ludicrous, but it's going on, and people have to know about this.
Right, absolutely, and that's what we try to do here at Catholic Vote. One of the many things is, keep people engaged, keep them plugged in, and keep the blinders off, because it's really, I have people ask me all the time, how do you do it? How do you read all the news? How do you listen to all these things that get you down? And it's, at the end of the day, it's like, well, the alternative is being uneducated on it and walking through life. Ignorance is not truly bliss.
Right. Well,
I mean, it's dangerous.
Yes.
and that's why we keep coming back to Catholic Vote. We've had you guys on probably more than any single group over the years. Yeah.
You do make our job a little bit easier. You follow quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got a bigger staff than Deacon Mike and I.
Right.
So
Right. Just
good.
two of us here doing this thing. And, you do have a lot more resources, and we appreciate that. That's why we tap on you all the time.
Well, we love it. Yeah. Well, this is a busy season for us, but I am excited as we move past the next 19 days, and we're able to spend more time and more focus on projects just like this that we've talked about today.
That's good.
And so I think there's a lot more to roll down the pipe in the next year.
So speaking of this project, Logan, give us an idea of when you expect the final report to come out and where we as listeners can be able to find it when it's finally available.
Oh, trust me, we will be pushing it far and wide.
So
it will be
subscribing to Catholic Loop or Catholic Vote?
Yeah. Go on to CatholicVote.org. If you aren't subscribed to the Loop, put your email in. That's going to be the best way to make sure you stay up to date on when this is coming out. A lot of it is just reliant on the data getting finalized. And we want to make sure that it's ironclad before we release it. But I would imagine sometime in the next handful of months.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that. And I mentioned Catholic Vote earlier, but I think I said CatholicVote.com, but it's .org. And it's a great place to go to find out what's going on. And they do have the loop that they send out every day.
Yes.
Loop, even over the weekend, get a weekend loop.
And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if you're into podcasts, that they produce the Loopcast podcast available on YouTube and other podcasting subscriptions.
Very good. Very good.
And the Loopcast is super fun if you like a lighthearted podcast that does dive into the week.
And I love putting
happening.
faces, and putting faces to your names. Lara, we can't show your faces here on the Faith on Trial radio program, but
we put it in the promo. We put it in the
yeah,
promo.
well, I'm Erica's second string there too.
We've seen you.
I'm on there when Erica can't.
We've seen you. That's good.
Very good. But I want to thank you for joining us today. And again, if anybody wants to know anything more about this, CatholicVote.org is the place to go, and you can find all the information there, how you can sign up for these things. And Logan, we certainly appreciate your time. God bless you all, and God bless your whole staff in working on this. I hope you get to the bottom of it and provide us with a good report.
Much.
Okay, God bless you, Logan.
Keep us in your prayers.
We certainly will. Mm-hmm. All right. We will be going to take a short break right now. We'll be back with Steve Havemann in just a few minutes. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And welcome back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we have with us right now Steve Havemann, who is the Executive Director of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And for Steve, for those who don't know what St. Vincent de Paul is, or even who St. Vincent de Paul was, why don't you kind of fill us in a little bit on that background?
Yeah. Thanks for having me today. And so St. Vincent de Paul, we're actually celebrating our 100-year anniversary in Des Moines this year, which is pretty exciting. So we've been, for 100 years, we've been serving the people most in need in the community. We started out with helping orphans and people in prison and providing relief during the Great Depression regarding food and financial assistance. And over the years, we've grown and opened 3 thrift stores and our prisoner reentry program and our employment training, our 2 food pantries. So all of our services are targeted towards helping people become self-sufficient.
All right. And I know you've got a couple of new programs that you've started, or one of them is, I know it's been around for a while. First of all, I want to ask you about this Sobering Center. What's a Sobering Center?
Yeah, I think through COVID and after, I think a lot of people felt isolated, and we know that substance use challenges increased during COVID. In fact, almost 40% of Iowans admitted to drinking during work hours during the lockdown during the pandemic. So we know that alcohol became a bigger problem in Iowa than it already was. And Polk County and the Polk County supervisors really led the way in, even on a national level, of addressing, some of these challenges head on. So they asked us to partner with them to open the Sobering Center, which really is a diversion program, a diversion opportunity for people that are arrested for nonviolent offenses regarding alcohol. So if somebody has too much to drink and passes out on the street, they're not going to go to jail for that now. They're going to come to the Sobering Center. We're going to help them get sober, help them stay warm and safe, and we're going to help connect them to other resources in the community, up into including substance abuse counseling, if that's something they need. But at a minimum, we'll help connect them with food or clothing or employment assistance, help them get back on their feet and trending in the right direction. So it's something that's going to be open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and it's going to be our quote for the 100-year anniversary has been, St. Vincent de Paul is the first step to a second chance. And this really personifies that, of giving people a second chance instead of going to jail or going to jail again, helping them get sober and address the needs that they have and help walk with them and hopefully help them straighten their life out.
I love that. That's so Christian.
Yeah, I was a chaplain for a number of years at an alcohol and drug rehab center, and this is a daunting project when you have people that are dependent on either drugs or alcohol. It's a lot easier, of course, when you have somebody that's an occasional abuser, but when you get people that are hardcore, that's really a tough rock to get through.
It is, and that's there's going to be some ups and downs with this, I have no doubt. But this is one of those things where we know it's the right thing to do for people. We know it's the right thing to do for families, because some of these folks that are going to be visiting us are going to have families at home, and if we can help a mom or a dad or a grandma or grandpa or aunt and uncle get back home to their family, be sober, and be a positive influence in young people's lives, it's going to help change generational poverty and cycles of substance abuse. And, that's really why we're doing this.
So, Steve, Deacon Mike talks about how hard it is for him to be involved in those kinds of programs. Give me an idea of how you staff something like this. Do you use volunteers? Will the society have paid staff? How will it work?
We're gonna start off with only paid staff, and hopefully we can get to a point of having volunteers or of a chaplain and different things. But to start, we're going to have at all times an EMT and a paramedic on site, and then we're going to have a site director and then 2 community navigators. And community navigators are the folks that will be meeting with the individuals after they sober up to help connect them to those resources in the community to help them get back on their feet.
Very good. Now, there's another program that you have. It's called Safe Babies Court Team. Why don't you tell us about that? That's an intriguing title.
Yeah, so the Safe Babies Court Team has been around for a while. It's been a project of Health and Human Services and the University of Iowa, and of course they're both still involved. But we had the opportunity to apply for that grant and received it, and really excited because, again, that's all about unifying families and keeping families together whenever it's feasible. So we're working with families of the kids that are 0 to 3 years old, and the kids are at risk or have been taken away temporarily from the families due to different challenges, so typically regarding substance use. And so what we're able to do is focus on providing resources to the family and if appropriate, the child, to help them reunify as a family, again, focus on sobriety, follow the court orders, and work with a social worker to get back on their feet. Again, the focus is unifying those families. I think that's kind of the future of addressing challenges of poverty is focusing on keeping families together. too many kids are coming from, serious challenges and broken homes, and it shows. So I think that's
I've had some experience in juvenile court when I was just starting to practice, and it was heart-wrenching to see what's happening to some of these children. And the successes are when you find a family, a mother and a father, or sometimes just a mother, that's willing to take the steps necessary to correct her situation. That's when you get the success. When you don't get the success is when they wait to the last minute just before the next court hearing, then they rush out and do their doctor's appointment or whatever it is, just so they can check a box and can stay in the system with the possibility of getting their child back. But those that put their mind to it, those that took it as an obligation, did fairly well, and they did fairly well for their children, got their children back, and they were united, and they've gone on many years later without any problems.
Yeah, well, that's tremendous to hear. That that gives me a little bit more hope too. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I'd see as I would go into one court proceeding, I would see people coming out of another one that have all their kids back and are doing fine, and there are people, some of them that I know from the drug and alcohol rehab unit, and they talk to me and they tell me things are going great, and they've got a new perspective on life, and that's what we're looking for. All right, there's an immersion program. I think we've talked to you about this before, but I want to bring it up again.
Yeah. So immersion is our prisoner reentry program, and that's been around since 2017. And we've really grown and expanded that program. In fact, we just got a federal block grant from Senator Grassley's office and the Bureau of Justice Assistance to expand that effort. So a big feather in the cap of our immersion team for demonstrating the results they have and the impact they have to be able to get a big federal block grant like that. So immersion focuses on really that individual case management, that individual relationship, and then we pair them with a mentor as well, a Vincentian or a St. Vincent de Paul volunteer mentor. And between the mentor and one of our team members, these individuals are connected to community resources, have those safe relationships with people to talk to and troubleshoot scenarios. It's kind of, I equate it to helping a kid graduate high school, where a kid that's at risk of dropping out says it was a coach, a counselor, or a teacher that kept me engaged. I think it's kind of the same thing to prevent recidivism, is having one or two safe relationships for individuals that have been incarcerated out in the community to reach out to and talk to. And our program showing the results, the statewide recidivism rate is around 44%, and our reoffending or recidivism rate is about 18%. So we're outperforming the state average, which is good.
Now, you provide some vocational training there too, don't you?
We do, yep. We're focusing on helping them get to livable wage jobs. We're focusing on connecting them to affordable housing and knocking down barriers for transportation and getting bus passes and food and clothes and providing that one relationship to keep them out of a tough situation.
Okay. Now, are there any other programs? I imagine you've got a lot of other programs, but some we might be interested in that I haven't mentioned yet.
I mean, I think it's always important to bring up our Back to Work program, which is really a sister program for immersion. And that's really the program that focuses strictly on employment. And it's a 1-week program where we work with a small group of individuals in a classroom setting. It's usually about 10 to 12 individuals. And those students go to class 9 to 3, Monday through Friday for a week. And it's just 1 week, and they earn as they learn. So they actually get paid minimum wage to be in class during their time. And we have almost a 95% placement after that 1 week of class, where we're focusing on soft skills and professional accountability and healthy relationships at home and work, and a little bit of training in the trades. So that's really working. Average starting wage has been just over $18 an hour. So that's livable wage in Polk County, which is, certainly better than minimum wage or some of those challenging scenarios. So that program is really working, and we follow up with those individuals for 9 to 12 months after they graduate the program and become employed. And we also follow up with their employer because we know folks that have faced barriers in life sometimes are prone to a little bit of self-sabotage, and sometimes they have a false sense of how well things are going. So we work with their supervisor as well to communicate and, prevent some of those self-sabotaging behaviors.
I had a guy I knew who was a ex-felon, and I tried to get him involved in the immersion program, and he kept saying, "Yeah, I'm going to go. I want to do that. He never did that, and he's back in prison again. And he calls me once in a while, and I tell him, you should have gone to that damn program I told you about. You might have stayed out again. But he was picked up on a probation violation. And one of the things I know about these people that I've worked with who are behind bars is they're not all violent, they're not all angry, they're not all mean people. Sometimes they're just plain stupid. They just don't do things right, and they should know better. And I would think that as you take people under your wing and show them the right way to do things, that goes a long way to correcting a lot of the problems that they have, especially if you can explain to people that, you got to get up and be at work on time. You can't call in sick all the time because you'd rather do something else.
Yeah, and it's, the time to report isn't optional, and, lunch isn't an hour and 48 minutes, and, it's a whole change, and sometimes it's a whole change of behavior because maybe those individuals were raised without the expectation of working. So it really takes a long time to rewire the brain for those productive habits to kick in.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about one last thing before we let you go, and that's you've got a book out.
I do.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So it was my first book, and it was would have been my grandfather's 13th book. It's the Excellent Persuader. That book was released in 2013 and has done really quite well. My grandfather was Joe Baden. His two big books, they were #1 New York Times best-selling books. The first one was in 1963, was Tough-Minded Management, and he was in Des Moines and had Baden, Hudson, and Schwab Consulting, and they had branches in Dallas and Houston and Los Angeles and Minneapolis and Omaha and Des Moines. And so over the years, this would have been his 13th book. His second New York Times bestseller was Tough-Minded Leadership, and that was released in 1989. And he passed away in 2006. And he was really my mentor. And even in high school, with all my buddies and with whatever girl I was dating, he was always my best friend. We were just really close. And he passed in 2006, and when he was in hospice, he asked me to promise him that I would finish that book and said it would change my life. And I promised him I would. And it took me a little while to have the emotional fortitude to step up and finish it. But I did, and it was released in 2013, and he was right, it did change my life. 2014 was the year my daughter was born, and I was able to, on top of working full-time, was able to do some consulting and make it affordable to have a kid. And that book ultimately led me to St. Vincent de Paul, believe it or not. And I've been here for a little bit over 9 years. It's been incredible.
Where can we get the book?
It's on Amazon. It's in local bookstores still in Des Moines. I know for sure it's in Beaverdale Books. It's in the bookstore in Valley Junction. It's on the Whip and Stock website. They're a Christian publisher out of Eugene, Oregon. But everybody knows how to get a book on Amazon. So
okay.
It's the Excellent Persuader.
Good. But it's not available at St. Vincent's. You can't walk into the thrift store and buy your book.
No, I think that might be a conflict of interest.
Probably would be, but I did want to mention it so that we can get that information out there to everybody. All right. Last question is, how do we get a hold of St. Vincent de Paul? If we're interested in any of these programs that we've been talking about, or we just want to know the time and locations of the thrift stores or where to take a donation, how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can give us a call at 515-282-8327, and, it takes you to an automated teller, and you can hit 1 if you want to schedule a pickup or a donation to St. Vincent de Paul of clothes or furniture or household goods that are in good shape. You can refer people to our programs that are in need. We're coming into the time of year with Thanksgiving and Christmas where we always ask for additional funding to provide resources for families during the holidays. People oftentimes forget that St. Vincent de Paul is not just a thrift store. We're a charity, and we need some outside funds to help us continue all of this impactful work. We served 35,000 people last year in the Des Moines metro area, and so we always need a little bit of extra help around the holidays to purchase more food and provide happy holidays for families and neighbors that are in need.
Well, very good. And we bless you for your work. Gina, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned there are 3 stores in the Des Moines area. Can you give us those locations for us?
Yeah, the historical location is on 1426 6th Avenue. I think that's the one most people are familiar with.
Yeah, north of University, yep.
Yeah, north of University, yep, and just before the river. And then the second location we opened in 2017, and that's on Army Post Road, kind of by Smitty's Tenderloin and Wells Fargo Bank. It's on Southwest 5th and Army Post. And then the third location that we opened 2 years ago is at 801 73rd Street. That's the A-frame building that is right off the 73rd Street, 8th Street exit off of 235. That used to be the art store and the ski chalet. So that's a well-known building in town, I think.
Across the street from the castle.
Yeah, exactly. Across the street from the castle. We're over the moat.
Yeah.
But and we accept donations from 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday, and we're open 6 days a week at our 6th Avenue location and 7 days a week at the other 2 for thrift store sales. So.
Well, very good, very good. Well, God bless you in your work, Steve, and we hope everything works out and is successful, and we hope some people pick up on these programs and may inquire about them, and maybe they can help change their lives with those.
Yeah, thank you, and blessings to both of you, and thanks for the opportunity to talk. This is really important work, and thanks for everything that both of you do.
Thank you very much. God bless you, Steve.
Right. Take care.
All right. Steve Havemann, the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul. Thank you very much for being with us. And Gina and I will be right back to wrap up after these messages. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And another interesting show. And I know I say that all the time, but I hope the listeners are finding out that it's interesting.
Well, yeah, I cannot find the common thread today. My brain is not working that fast, but both issues are very informative. I wish every community had a society of St. Vincent de Paul. Those programs are invaluable to keeping our community safe and healthy and filled with families that are loving.
Yeah, and they're very necessary. They're very necessary, and they do good work. And like I say, my wife has gotten involved in the conference at St. Augustine, and she's been out. She's gone several times to do home visits with people who were requesting funds. They couldn't pay their utility bill, or they had problems with their rent or whatever it was, and they needed help from St. Vincent de Paul. And they've gone out and they've worked with them and tried to counsel them in what they need to do to straighten out their finances and provide them with the funds that they need to get by a bad point in their life.
That's right. And we didn't talk about it, but I imagine other parishes have the same sort of thing.
Yes, they do.
Are they affiliated with this?
Yes.
Steve's organization?
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, Luann was just at the headquarters not too long ago for a treasurers meeting, all the different treasurers and how they fill out
from the
their
different
forms
parishes?
from the different parishes, yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So I hear about St. Vincent de Paul all the time. She's the one that told me about his book. I didn't know he had a book. But when I heard about that he had a book, I thought, well, we got to let him plug that.
Yeah, and then Logan, having her from Catholic Vote was a gem because they're very busy over there with 19 days till the election. I know that they hire staff to be in some of these more important cities, and she didn't say it, but I'll say it. There's a lot of Catholic citizens of this country that do not vote, and more important than anything, we need to vote, and we need to go all the way down the ballot, all the way down to the very last judge retention, dog catcher, who knows what's the last thing, or even the constitutional amendments.
Constitutional amendments.
Yeah, you need to take a look at those too, and vote. Everybody get out. I heard the lines yesterday when we opened absentee ballot voting. The lines at the election office here in Des Moines were long, so I'm hoping that's a good sign.
I know.
For a great turnout.
Next week, I think they have in-person voting at the West Des Moines Library.
Good to know.
And we're planning to go do that. We know who we're voting for. So we may as well bank the vote, right?
Yep. I'm going to vote early, and I'm going to go down to the election office. So I know my ballot's done, and it's right where it needs to be.
Yeah.
No chance of it being lost.
Yeah, well, vote early, but not necessarily often.
True.
True. Vote one time. We don't want to stuff the ballot box with bogus ballots. All right. I think that's about it for this week. Oh, I did want to mention one thing. There is a group of girls playing volleyball at the University of Nevada who are forfeiting games that are being played against teams that have a biological male on the team. And they're told not to. They're told not to say anything about it, but these girls had more backbone than most men do. And they said, no, this is our body. This is our privacy. This is our sport. We're going to stand up for it, and we're not going to play these other games. And they're letting them be forfeited.
I'm very proud of these young women. I heard the story also, and the school did, while they backed them, they told them that they were going to continue to conduct the game, and if the girls decided to forfeit, that was up to them, and there would be no repercussions. But that's a weak support from the university.
Well, like I say, these girls have better backbones than most men.
I would agree.
Yeah. All right. That's it for this week, I guess. Let's end with our Defender's Prayer. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. Do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. That's it. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Faith on Trial. Meantime, make sure you go to church this weekend and take your kids.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Manno. Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.